Friday evening, 1930. My mother did washing for other people, but no one was allowed to know because she was ashamed of it. Father was out looking for work, and I played with Friedrich in the Schneider's apartment. "What's that little tube you have over your doorpost?" I asked Friedrich. Frau Schneider came into the room just then and answered for Friedrich. "That's our mezuzah," she said, "our home's blessing. It's to help us to never forget God and His commandments." She took my hand and led me out of the room. On the way, she felt for the mezuzah with her right hand and kissed the finger she had touched it with. "Why don't you watch the street for a while?" she begged me. "Friedrich still has to change, and his father will be home any minute." Before she went out the door, she added more coal to the stove. She filled it all the way to the top and regulated it so that the coal would burn only weakly. I stood alone in that living room. Mother wouldn't begin her weekly cleaning until tomorrow. Friedrich's mother had already finished hers. The table shone. There wasn't a speck of dust on any of the furniture, and the glass in the cabinets sparkled. I was still admiring everything when Friedrich came back. He wore a white shirt and his best suit. Frau Schneider followed and pushed 2 chairs to the window for us. Silently, we looked out. Outside, it was already growing dark. Polycarp's peaked cap was already difficult to distinguish from the grass. Lights were already on in a few apartments. One after the other, the gas lamps in the street blazed up. Only a few people were about. It was very quiet. But the Schneider's apartment seemed unusually quiet. Frau Schneider spread a white cloth over the table, a cloth of such radiant white that it shone in the dim room. From the cupboard she took 2 candlesticks with new candles in them. From the kitchen she fetched 2 small homemade loaves of bread. These 2 loaves she placed on the table between the candlesticks and Herr Schneider's place. I had long stopped looking out the window. Instead, I watched Frau Schneider at her preparations. Why so festive? "What's going on?" I asked Friedrich in a whisper. "Sabbath," Friedrich replied in an equally low voice. Only a thin blood-red strip above the roof at the end of the block showed where the sun was going down. Everything was dipped in red. Frau Schneider removed her kitchen apron. She took a large silver goblet from the cabinet and set it at Herr Schneider's place. Next to it, she placed a prayer book. Then, turning to the wall bathed in red and murmuring something to herself, she lit both candles. While Frau Schneider prayed, we heard Herr Schneider unlocked the apartment door. A moment later, he entered the living room, dressed in a dark robe and wearing a tiny embroidered cap. Friedrich went to meet his father. Herr Schneider laid a hand on his head and said, "May God make thee as Ephraim and Manasseh. May the Lord bless thee and keep thee. May the Lord cause his countenance to shine upon thee and be gracious unto thee. May the Lord lift up his countenance toward thee and give thee peace." Then he opened the prayer book and read something to his wife in Hebrew. Silent, her head bent low, Frau Schneider listened. Still, I stared wonderingly into the candlelight and did not know what to make of it. Herr Schneider lifted the goblet from the table and filled it with wine. He held it with both hands and prayed. Then we all drank a sip from it. First Herr Schneider, the Frau Schneider, then Friedrich, then me. Herr Schneider left the room to wash his hands. When he returned, he spoke over the homemade bread. "Blessed art thou, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth." He broke 1 loaf and handed each of us a piece. We ate silently. In our apartment, someone was running water from the tap. "Your mother's home," Frau Schneider said in a low voice. "If you like, you could take her a few pears. They'll only get soft otherwise. The basket's in the hall." I said goodbye and thank you, and with the pears went downstairs to my mother. Before falling asleep, I could still hear the Schneiders singing together, softly and sadly. School begins 1931. Friedrich and I were allowed to sit on the same bench. Our teacher told us a story. Then we sang Little Hans, and our first school day was over. Our parents waited for us outside the school gate. Father was out of work in any case, and Herr Schneider had taken the day off. Like all German children, after their first day at school, Friedrich and I each received the large cone-shaped paper bag from our parents. Friedrich's was red, mine blue. My blue bag was a little smaller than Friedrich's red one. Friedrich opened his right away. He offered me one of his pieces of candy and broke a bar of chocolate so that everyone could have some. I was about to undo the bow on my paper bag when Mother shook her head. She took me aside and told me that I should wait until we got home. I couldn't understand why, but I obeyed. At the next street corner, Herr Schneider asks loudly, "And where to now?" Smiling, he looked at us all. Everyone regarded Herr Schneider expectantly. Only Father shot a frightened glance at Mother. Friedrich answered the question. Jubilantly, he shouted, "To the amusement park!" Again, Father looked at Mother. This time his eyes were anxious. Mother told Herr Schneider, "What a pity we can't come with you. I have so much to do at home, and I haven't even prepared lunch yet." "But, Mother," I implored her, "I'd so much like to go to the amusement park." Father stroked my head. "We can't, my boy. Think of Mother." But Herr Schneider seized my mother's arm, and Frau Schneider linked her arm with Father's. "No excuse is valid today," Herr Schneider explained. "On the first day of school, we are going to the amusement park." Father and Mother looked very downcast, but they went. Friedrich pushes 3 pieces of chocolate into my mouth at once. Then we raced ahead of our parents, arm in arm, paper bags in our hands. At the amusement park, the fathers took our hands. My father edged unobtrusively towards Mother. "You must lend me 5 marks, I heard him whisper in her ear. "But I don't have any money with me," Mother whispered back. "Just 2 marks of my household money." Father groaned, and then he said, "Give me 2 marks. I have another 70 pfennigs in my pocket." Mother burrowed in her pocketbook, supposedly looking for her handkerchief. She furtively pushed the 2 marks into Father's hands. Father looked unhappy. I was already sorry I had asked to go to the amusement park. The Schneiders marched ahead. We followed listlessly. We stopped at the merry-go-round. We watched it spin. Suddenly, Friedrich pushed a ticket into my hand. When the carousel stopped, we handed the paper bags to our mothers and climbed onto the horses. Mine was called Bella. The saddle blanket on Friedrich's was inscribed Fox. It was wonderful to ride round and round again. We waved and bounced and shouted and urged our horses on until the merry-go-round stopped. Herr Schneider bought us new tickets so we could ride a second time. When the carousel again came to a stop, Herr Schneider and his wife, and Father and Mother as well, clambered up. They mounted horses behind us, and we all rode together. Afterward, Frau Schneider bought us each an enormous stick of cotton candy. While we ate the cotton candy, Father, with a desperate face, kept counting his money in front of each stand we passed. He was trying to see if he had enough to buy something for everyone. "What should I do?" he asked in a whisper. Mother shrugged her shoulders hopelessly. Herr Schneider treated everyone to a long knockwurst with mustard and a roll. In his distress, Father could hardly get it down. I knew Mother loved knockwurst at fairs, but I could see she didn't enjoy this one because she was worrying. Suddenly, Father disappeared. He came back carrying 6 sticks of licorice. Frau Schneider was so delighted she never seemed to have had anything so beautiful. Soon everyone was sucking a licorice stick. "Thank you. Okay, where am I?" Father heaved a sigh of relief. We children were allowed to go on the fire engine ride. Then we watched our parents, Herr Schneider with my mother, Father with Frau Schneider, on swing boats. Friedrich yawned. I too was tired. "Enough for today," said Herr Schneider. "Come on, home." At the far end of the amusement park, Father finally hit the right booth. Remembrance photos. 1 postcard, 1 mark. 2 postcards, 1 mark, 50 pfennigs. The sign read. At once, Father made for the owner. "Take a picture of us," he said. "We'll take 2 postcards." The owner of the booth bowed. "Closer, ladies and gentlemen," he murmured. "Step closer, please." Inside, a mountain scene had been painted on the back wall. Before it stood a piebald wooden horse. "Please have a seat," said the man. "Where?" asked Father. "On the horse," said the man. "But 2 at most will fit on that," Father said. Just a moment, said the man. He gripped the horse's tail as if he wanted to tear it out. He put the tail over his shoulder and pulled hard. Slowly, the wooden horse stretched, grew longer and longer so that the 10 grown-ups would have found room on it comfortably. When Herr Schneider saw the stretched-out horse, he couldn't stop laughing. I had never seen him laugh so hard. His wife had to hold on to him so he wouldn't fall over. My father proudly mounted the endless horse. The owner of the booth brought a footbench and helped the women up. Last of all, he hoisted up the children. When Herr Schneider climbed on, he nearly fell off the other side. He still shook so with laughter. Finally, we all were squatting, one behind the other, on the wooden horse. Our mothers held on tightly, otherwise we would have surely slid off from sheer fatigue. Only father propped a hand on his hip. Proudly he rode in the middle, head held high, and Herr Schneider laughed. He laughed so hard at the accordion horse that he infected all of us. Even father smiled, if only a little.
The owner disappeared behind the black cloth of his camera. Only his hands poked out from it. He gave instructions no one understood. At last, he changed the ground glass screen for the photographic plate, stood beside the camera, growled, "Attention!" and pressed down the red rubber ball. Holding ourselves motionless, we stifled our laughter and stared into the camera until the man said, "Thank you." He disappeared into the dark room with the plate, and we hopped down from the horse. At once, Herr Schneider began to pull the horse's tail. And behold, it stretched still further. Herr Schneider lengthened the horse till it reached the side of the wall of the booth. When we regarded it in all of its length against the mountain scene, even father had to laugh out loud. Then the booth owner brought us the 2 postcards, and father generously paid him from his jacket pocket. With a bow, he handed 1 postcard to Frau Schneider. I sat in front. The wooden horse carried my paper bag between its ears. Behind me rode mother. She pulled a face as if she had a frog in her mouth that mustn't pop out. Father lorded it in the center. Everyone who saw the picture had to assume that the force belonged to him. Friedrich held on to father's jacket. His paper bag towered above all the mountaintops and seemed to help support the clouds. Frau Schneider had hold of Friedrich's collar. She really looked very dear. Herr Schneider embraced her laughingly from behind. On the way home, everyone was still happy thinking about the remembrance pictures. Only father felt ashamed because he had taken himself so seriously on the wooden horse. When we reached home, I stumbled exhaustedly into the hall. I quickly threw the new satchel into the corner and untied the bow on my paper bag. It contained nothing but a bag of sugared rusks and lots of crumpled paper. Mother stroked my hair. "But you know, my boy," she said, "that we are poor." Father washed his hands and asked, "What's for lunch today?" Mother sighed. "Nothing," she replied. "We spent the lunch money at the amusement park."